This is a propaganda coup for the CCP. If TikTok gets banned, the CCP can spend the rest of history saying, those Americans, they talk about free speech. They talk about, a big game about that. They don't mean it. They don't believe it. Look, they banned TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, and we've said it's terrible that the CCP doesn't allow Facebook or Twitter to be in their country. Well, we're going to lose the moral high ground on that if we do something which winds up with TikTok being banned here. Welcome to Law and Chaos. If this were TikTok, I'd be doing a cool dance or maybe cooking something that involved a block of cream cheese and a pound of rigatoni baked in a disposable foil pan. But it's a podcast, so instead, I'm talking to Corbin Barthold from Tech Freedom about why politicians have fixated on banning TikTok among the many, many platforms that are amusing Americans to death. Why are all these politicians freaking out about kids doing stupid shit online in this particular way? We've got a lot to cover, so let's get after it. Hey guys, it's Liz Dye, and I confess, I do not go on TikTok, but I have kids who do, and they seem none the worse for wear. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that they are more media savvy and better able to navigate the internet than I am, and most of my peers. So I'm instinctively hostile to legislation premised on the theory that people my age and older need to pass laws to tell kids how to be online. Trust me, the kids know better than we do. This is their native language. They will be fine. I also care about the First Amendment, and it seems to me that most of these laws regulating online platforms violate it. And finally, I'm not new here. So much of the political discourse around TikTok is just racist outrage about China. Let's not kid ourselves. If it was Tiki-Toki with an umlaut and was owned by a Dutch conglomerate, no one would give a shit because there'd be no political capital in demagoguing against those meanies in The Hague. Corbin and I had a lively chat in the main show, but we mostly talked about the proposed federal ban and the political discourse around TikTok generally. So let's talk here for a bit about the Montana law, which sought to make TikTok illegal in that state. Because I don't think Montana is going to be the last state to try this nonsense. So, okay, it is SB 419, Senate Bill 419. The preamble contains two parts. The first part is just anti-China hyperventilating. It says, whereas the People's Republic of China is an adversary of the United States and Montana and has an interest in gathering information about Montanans, Montana companies, and the intellectual property of users to engage in corporate and international espionage. Okay. Whereas TikTok is a wholly owned subsidiary of ByteDance, a Chinese corporation. And whereas the People's Republic of China exercises control and oversight over ByteDance, like other Chinese corporations, and can direct the company to share user information, including real-time physical locations of users. And whereas TikTok gathers significant information from its users, accessing data against their will to share with the People's Republic of China. Okay, calm down. Right. Every platform you and I use is accessing our data. You signed in the terms of service that you were cool with it. It is not against your will. It's just maybe against your better judgment. Okay. The second part of this law is where the Montana legislators say, hey, everyone, this is a content-based speech regulation, just in case you had any doubts. Okay, here's the preamble. Whereas TikTok fails to remove and may even promote dangerous content that directs minors to engage in dangerous activities, including but not limited to throwing objects at moving automobiles, taking excessive amounts of medication, lighting a mirror on fire and then attempting to extinguish it using only one's body parts, inducing unconsciousness through oxygen deprivation, cooking chicken in NyQuil, pouring hot wax on a user's face, attempting to break an unsuspecting passerby's skull by tripping him or her into landing face first into a hard surface, placing metal objects in electrical outlets, swerving cars at high rates of speed, smearing human feces on toddlers, licking doorknobs and toilet seats to place oneself at risk of contracting coronavirus, attempting to climb stacks of milk crates, shooting passersby with air rifles, loosening lug nuts on vehicles, and stealing utilities from public places. I mean, don't do any of that, but also calm down, Grandpa. So the legislators banned TikTok in the state of Montana, and Governor Greg Gianforte signed it. The law was immediately challenged by a whole range of plaintiffs, but the named plaintiff in the trial and appellate level is a woman named Samantha Alario, who sells sustainably made swimwear and uses TikTok to market her products, right? Female small business owner, clearly negatively impacted if the ban goes into effect, and she's a pretty sympathetic plaintiff. So the consortium of plaintiffs challenging the law made a whole bunch of arguments, but the important thing to focus on here is the First Amendment issue. Because the state says, no, we're not regulating speech, we're regulating conduct and commerce. This is a consumer protection law to stop the CCP from harvesting all the data from Montana citizens. And again, not going to be the last TikTok ban you see, and not going to be the last time you see the is it speech or is it conduct argument. But let's cut the shit here. If this were just a law about data collection, the statute would say no internet platform owned by a hostile foreign government can collect data from our citizen. That is not what it says. The law says no TikTok. And also, it goes out of its way to talk about all the harmful stuff on the site, the NyQuil chicken. And you know what? I think kids challenging each other to cook chicken in NyQuil is a bad idea. But I also know that that is First Amendment protected speech. And in this country, that still means something, or it should. So the federal district court, which, spoiler alert, did issue a preliminary injunction, found that the law implicated speech both by consumers and also by the company itself, since the law bans TikTok's use of an algorithm to compile a user's feed, which the algorithm itself is expressive speech. There are some other arguments in the opinion, which is highly readable. I suggest that you do. The court talks about federal preemption. That is, what the hell is the state of Montana doing making foreign policy and interfering with commerce? And the judge also reads Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen for filth. Here he is pointing out that you can't say, I'm not doing foreign policy, I'm just doing consumer protection, when you get up and say shit like this. So here's from the opinion. For example, in the first Montana House of Representatives hearing on the bill, defendant, Attorney General Knudsen, explained, TikTok is spying on Americans, period. TikTok is a tool of the Chinese Communist Party. It is owned by a Chinese company, and under China law, if you are based in China, you will cooperate with the Chinese Communist Party, period. He further explained his belief that China sees a war with the United States as inevitable, and China is using TikTok as an initial salvo in that war. This, he explains, is a reason the bill is necessary. During the second reading of the bill, Representative Brandon Lurr, a Republican from Savage, stated, we are facing a threat unlike any other from the Chinese Communist Party hiding behind TikTok, where they can spy on Americans by collecting personal information by keystrokes and even use their locations. That's why I urge you to join me in voting yes on Senate Bill 419 to ban TikTok in Montana. TikTok is a national security threat. At the same hearing, Representative Katie Sullivan, a Democrat from Missoula, noted that TikTok is perhaps dangerous, but the bill is not, quote, taking privacy and security seriously because it only limits one company and one country when we know very well that other social media companies are doing the same thing. And she is right. All of the platforms that you use, Facebook and Twitter and Google and every other company you deal with, is hoovering up every bit and byte of your personal data, including your location, which I might add, the kids know and understand better than we do. They grew up in this world where privacy is functionally non-existent, right? They're the ones that are like Venmoing each other money with a little memo line that's public. They do understand this. And furthermore, you cannot claim to be protecting them from evildoers harvesting their data if you only block one of the skazillion companies extracting the data. So that is ridiculous. And we'll get into it further in the main show. But I just wanted to talk about the state level debate, which is a little bit different from the federal debate. Okay, if you are a paying subscriber, either at patreon.com/lawandchaospod or on Substack at lawandchaospod.com, you are going to get to the show immediately because you do not have to listen to any ads. But if you are just here to hang out with me, I will see you in a minute with Corbin Barthold after we pay some bills. And with us today is Corbin Barthold of the nonpartisan think tank Tech Freedom, where he serves as Internet Policy Counsel and Director of Appellate Litigation. He's an expert on the intersection of technology and the law, and he has an impressive ability to call bullshit on complex issues in language normal people can understand. In fact, he did just that this week in the Bulwark, breaking down their proposed TikTok ban, which is working its way through Congress. And he talked about all the preposterous political posturing around it. Corbin, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here.
I'm so glad you came back.
Always a pleasure to speak with you, Liz.
Let's get into it. For the ancients among us, or those of us who do not have children who are old enough to explain it, who or what is TikTok, and how come all these politicians are yelling about it?
TikTok is the popular social media short-form video app. As best I can tell, it is the home of amazingly creative people who don't have to look after children. They have time to put fancy videos of their graffiti art or pranking each other, taking the mattress out while the person's not home and then putting water so they get all wet when they lie down is a fun one. People play The Floor is Lava at CVS, much fun. Chucking 2-liter bottles of soda off of roofs was popular for a while. My data's a little old. The last time I was hanging out on TikTok was, I think, even like a couple years ago. So who knows what's popular now? But, TikTok, pranks, fun, cleverness, dancing.
Right. I mean, I feel like I see it when it floats up to like old people's social media, where I live, but mostly I do not. Is it like moving Instagram? No, it's not like
Instagram. I like that.
No, it's not. But I do get it. Look, I have one teenager left, but I mean, my kids are of the TikTok era, and they say it's a pretty big thing with the youngs.
With the youngs, yes.
But apparently the olds have their panties in a wad about it. What is going on here?
This has been a long rolling thing. We're now in year 4 or something of the on again, off again mission to ban TikTok. For a while there, things were dormant. A few legal challenges have been brought to squash the Trump administration's attempts to ban TikTok. A judge pretty much laughed out of court the state of Montana's effort to ban TikTok. And I, for one, thought maybe we were done with this. Little did we know that behind the scenes, it looks like probably Representatives Gallagher and Krishnamurthy, the bipartisan duo that leads the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party in the House, have been quietly working on a bill. It's called H.R. 7521 to ban TikTok. Now, it looks like they were doing a lot of hard thinking and have their super master genius plan. You'll hear people say, well, we're not going to ban TikTok. We're just going to steal TikTok. You see, it's totally different. It gives TikTok 180 days to find a seller in the United States that the federal government would bless. So, fire sale yourself to Steve Mnuchin. That's a real thing that was going around.
Yes.
Or in the event that you don't, and the Chinese government has made it pretty clear they would not allow this, which I can go on and on and on about saying negative shit about the Chinese Communist Party, but I'll give them this. They're sitting there going, no, we're not going to let you rob us. And so in that event, what would happen is that app stores, so that's like the Google App Store and the Apple App Store, would no longer be allowed to carry TikTok, and then internet hosting services wouldn't. So you might think that this bill somehow does something to TikTok. It does not. It is actually aimed at totally other players. We can get into why they think that's some clever idea or whatever. And then it also gives the president the power to start banning other apps that are controlled by foreign adversary countries. So that's where we... and it just passed the House by an overwhelming majority, and that's where we stand.
Okay. I want to back you up 1 second because I want to talk, since we're going to talk a lot about the political valence of this law, can we back up and talk about what happened with when Trump was president, the first time we had this dumb discussion, which I think we both agree, like, spoiler alert, this is dumb. Can you talk about when Trump first said that he was going to force the sale?
Yes, this is dumb. So Donald Trump, big ban TikTok guy back when he was president, it was all part of his larger effort to look tough on China.
Mm-hmm.
He'll decide that he loves Xi Jinping because he's a strong man. So
Right.
for
But
10
don't
minutes.
call him Winnie the Pooh. Actually, we'll come back to that because the Winnie the Pooh thing is a thing.
Yes. So for 10 minutes, Trump was tough on China. So he tried to ban TikTok.
Trade wars are good and easy to win.
The legal decisions back then were based on the fact that the president didn't have the power under his sort of economic national security purview to do this. Now we'd probably be far more in First Amendment issues, and there's all kinds of other issues we can get into. But round one kind of was a damp squib, and the federal government kind of moved away from it. We had a long process with CFIUS. We had a long drawn process that could pop up actually back at any time. That's still sitting there.
Right. That's the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States.
Talking about potentially forcing a sale of TikTok, although that, for super nerds, is related to a purchase of an American app called Musical.ly. So it would be a total non sequitur to do that based on the fears about propaganda and all that stuff. So, but that's going on over there. So we've kind of had some false starts, you might say. And HR 7521, you might call the first direct attack on a Death Star attempt to ban TikTok by the federal government.
Why do they want to ban it, though? I mean, like, who cares if the kids watch dance videos? I mean, like, look, my kids have said, okay, we took it off of our phones, or at least one of my kids said, yeah, I took it off my phone. It was too distracting. Like, not being distracted, I get that. But the government doesn't generally, like, make it illegal to be distracted for kids or anyone. That's not generally what I want my government to be doing.
This gets a little bit frustrating because it's nailing Jello at the wall. So why don't I try to start with the most reasonable case, and we can kind of expand out from there.
Okay.
There is a fear that the data that TikTok collects can funnel its way back to the Chinese Communist Party. That is not crazy. That is worth being concerned about in isolation. Now, data is just spewing all over the place because we don't have a comprehensive data privacy law. There are all kinds of statements you could make after you make that first statement that show that you don't really care about the data. But in isolation, that's a reasonable thing to bring up.
Just to explicate what you were saying there, all of the other platforms, which all of us are on, are collecting enormous amounts of data, right? Facebook, if you're still on Facebook, like, you're basically letting Mark Zuckerberg give you a colonoscopy every day. So, worrying about the Chinese Communist Party watching you do dance videos is, all right.
And you can go further because all of that data is floating around available for purchase by the Chinese Communist Party. They can buy this stuff without trouble.
Right.
So, show me the smoking gun that the CCP is blackmailing Americans with TikTok data. If they're dumb enough to do that, I think that's something worth talking about. We don't have that as we sit here.
Right. Now, there was one instance that we have established where the CCP did do that, right?
So if you're talking about the journalist scandal, which is worth talking about, because I ain't here to talk about TikTok being a great, responsible company. They've earned a lot of distrust. And the best example of that, although there are several, is their auditor, their internal investigator, used TikTok data to try to track journalists to whom TikTok employees were leaking information. Okay. Really, really dumb. Don't do that.
Right. It's super stupid. That was not the CCP. I
yes, but as best we can tell from kind of the outside looking in, it was an idiot internal auditor. It's not some person in China. It was an American. He got fired. Everybody involved in this got fired. Not a good look, but we have yet to find any evidence that TikTok is engaging in some kind of data surveillance operation on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay.
So it only gets worse from here.
Right. It's only going to be dumber reasons to oppose TikTok. I got it.
The other main concern that gets thrown around is propaganda. And this kind of goes from bad to worse. Bad is simply being concerned that the Chinese Communist Party can direct TikTok to put a thumb on the scale of the algorithm to do things like suppress comparisons of Xi Jinping to Winnie the Pooh, or suppress stuff about the Tiananmen Square massacre or surface videos that are critical of the Biden administration's policy toward Israel. A lot of people talk about, well, what if China invades Taiwan and what could they do to the algorithm? As if all Americans would go on TikTok and not understand that they should be suspicious of what they see during a hot war over Taiwan. Put that aside. Okay, so we're already getting into huge First Amendment problems that I'm sure we'll circle back to. But that's the sort of best possible scenario of the propaganda fear. And even the legislators that you would hope would be the adult in the room go straight tinfoil hat on this. They say, oh man, Douyin in China, which is the Chinese equivalent of TikTok, they are showing their kids STEM videos and making them do math. And they're getting the kids to do yoga. And then over here, they're sending them suicidal ideation and drugs.
Tide Pods. It's the freaking Tide Pods again.
Putting aside the fact that I went on Douyin to check this out, and shockingly, it's risque dance videos and Jet Li kicking people in the face, and I couldn't find any STEM videos. The notion that you can force feed the kids the STEM videos and have this long con plan where we're going to take down the West because their kids aren't going to get enough STEM videos. It's that's to use my favorite example. Senator Britt of Alabama, who gave the crazy response to President Biden's State of the Union address. I recommend people go find this. It really, you can't parody it. She goes,
why don't we play a clip?
Please do.
Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party is undercutting America's workers. China is buying up our farmland, spying on our military installations, and spreading propaganda through the likes of TikTok. You see, the CCP knows that if it conquers the minds of our next generation, it conquers America. And what does President Biden do? Well, he bans TikTok for government employees, but creates an account for his own campaign. Y'all, you can't make this stuff up.
That cadence, she said, I actually tried to track the cadence in writing in my Bulwark article. I mean, it's hard to do. They just over the top. That's where the propaganda fear sort of ends up. And then finally, you get the people who just hate social media and say it rots people's brains and don't differentiate TikTok and don't understand that they're saying the quiet part out loud of why this bill violates the First Amendment. And they say,
right. Can you break that down for the non-lawyers? Because that really is saying the quiet part out loud.
Children have First Amendment rights. There is Supreme Court case law there that leaves it open to question whether it goes up to exactly the amount an adult has. But you have a First Amendment right to receive information, as do children. That goes, by the way, all the way to foreign propaganda. There's a Supreme Court case called Lamont versus Postmaster General that says if you want, and it was literally that case, Chinese Communist Party propaganda. It was a publication called the Peking Review. And the Supreme Court said, you have a right to receive that and read it. You're an American. In the case of adults, you can be responsible and figure out what you think about things. In the case of children, you're going to be an adult. You need to learn how to assess information and figure out what is valid and what is not and what you think.
Amen to that, man, as a parent. Amen to that one.
So the moment as a legislator, you're saying, I want to ban TikTok because children are seeing ideas and I am worried that they will find those ideas convincing. You are just saying out loud, I want to ban this for reasons that violate the First Amendment.
Right. That is a content-based speech regulation, and it violates the First Amendment, right? That they are saying the quiet part out loud because they are saying this is a content-based speech regulation, and I am doing something that violates the Constitution. I dare the Supreme Court to do something about it.
One thing we get so often is people who say, I support free speech, and then they have no idea what that means. And the moment they're confronted with the actual consequences of being pro-free speech, the mask falls. And the Montana bill is a great example of that. The state of Montana, in their law, said TikTok is purveying videos such as one was like NyQuil chicken, which was totally this Barbara Streisand effect thing, but whatever. They were saying specific content. They were naming specific videos that they were worried about, which nobody seemed to get the memo there, that is just shouting to the rooftops. Our bill is a content-based regulation.
Right. If you're saying we need to ban TikTok because kids are watching it and it's making them like eat Tide Pods or cook chicken in NyQuil and eat this blue chicken or eat, like an entire, jar of cinnamon, then you are saying, I want to ban this because of its content. That's something which legislators used to be smart enough not to do, but apparently not anymore.
Well, and the other one that we see with these legislators, when we were doing the propaganda fears, I didn't even get to the full scope of all the bad takes here. One of them is, after October 7th, it was revealed on TikTok that a lot of young people are very sympathetic to Palestine and even to Hamas. I, Senator, am horrified by this and want to blame TikTok or shut down TikTok. That is directly trying to regulate a speaker based on the message they are conveying. This is first day of First Amendment law in law school or whatever.
Yeah, as someone who doesn't practice law, but who went to law school, I will say everything since the past 8 years has been what the? Because all of these things happen and all of these laws get passed and you're like, that's not a thing. You watch more or less every single thing that Ken Paxton does in Texas and you're like, I took the bar. That's not a thing. But apparently it's a thing.
Yeah, that's been wild with Congress as well.
Right.
I have a rough mental schema wherein anything that happens in the states, I'm never shocked because the states are Bush League and you'll get
the laboratories of democracy.
The House, not much better. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene. Of course, they'll pass a TikTok bill in 48 hours with a 50-0 committee vote because they're just flying by the seat of their pants. You get up to the Senate and okay, yes, you still have Josh Hawley. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of demagoguery.
I mean, Tommy Tuberville is an actual senator.
But it is surprising to see how many of the senators dive straight into, we should ban TikTok because of the messages that are available on TikTok. And they think they are not losing the legal case against their bill, should it be enacted into law, by giving all this ammunition to wave around that this is in fact a blatant First Amendment violation.
Right. There is no damn way that J.D. Vance, who went to Yale Law School, his wife clerked for Chief Justice Roberts, he knows what the First Amendment says. And so does Josh Hawley. I mean, a lot of these people, like Mike Lee, he clerked for Justice Clarence Thomas. Come on. These are sophisticated people. I think that they are saying shit that they know to be untrue for political motives. I know that this is breaking ground here and a crazy thing, but correct me if I'm wrong. These guys know that they're full of crap, right?
Well, anybody who was taking Donald Trump's side between November and January 2020, 2021, you know this to be true. So yes, anything else they say should lack credibility. And it is discouraging because the Chinese Communist Party, if you're frustrated with COVID lockdowns and you're in the street in Shanghai waving a blank piece of white paper, you can go to prison. Mm-hmm. These are not people we should trust. The ones running the CCP. It is. I'm fine with the House having a select committee that is making sure we're looking into things like prisons that the CCP has opened on our territory. I don't know. That seems like something worth looking into. But is that they're not doing the serious stuff to make sure that the CCP is not manipulating us in the United States? It's just, we're going to protect your privacy by banning TikTok. Straight to the thing that's going to be easy to demagogue. You've got Dan Crenshaw out there saying a vote against this bill is a vote for the CCP.
Good
and,
Lord.
We end up in the worst possible timeline.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is in some sense a perfect storm, right? It's xenophobia, it's technophobia, it's protect the children, right? It's a perfect opportunity for all of these politicians to grandstand and not actually do anything. Although, I mean, I guess they are. They passed the damn bill.
But yes, of all the things to do to make sure we address risks posed to us by the CCP, this is the thing. If I were on the select committee for the Chinese Communist Party, I'd be quite frustrated that we aren't doing more serious things. And even looking at this bill, which I would not support, I'd be frustrated that there are these, as I said, it's starting from a reasonable concern about data collection or whatever. As I put in my Bulwark article, there are immediately all these politicians that have to make it weird, that have to, turn the dial up to 11.
Yeah.
One way you could have done this, once again, not necessarily that I would have supported, but if you were serious, you would write the most neutral possible trade law. You would write a trade law that says if a country flat out bans all of our main products in a certain market, so in this instance, Facebook, Google, all of our social media banned in China,
right,
we will give the president the power to retaliate. And it would not mention TikTok. It would not mention the CCP. You'd play it cool. You'd pass that law. And then, the president bans TikTok on pure trade grounds. I don't think this is a crazy thing to be upset about, that China bans all of our American social media apps and then TikTok's allowed here.
Right.
You'd have a fighting chance in court, I think. You may still lose for First Amendment grounds, but that you've set yourself up that you plausibly could win. Of course, we can't do that. We're not capable of doing that. There are too many politicians that just are incapable of thinking it through or are starved for attention, and they get right up and say, it's the STEM videos, stupid.
Yeah. No, I mean, just to say the STEM videos, just to reiterate, that's them saying, no, TikTok feeds Chinese kids STEM videos, and they feed, our kids Tide Pod videos, and that's like information warfare, which is dumb and not true. Like, no kid is being forced to watch TikTok. If they were actually feeding the kids over there like Khan Academy videos, there wouldn't be kids on TikTok in China. Like, you're not, I mean, it's nonsense on its face.
Yeah, so I don't see this as much. During a previous round of this debate, there were politicians expressing fears about explicit CCP propaganda, that the CCP would have messages on TikTok that would be floated up about how great the CCP is. And I thought, have you seen the CCP propaganda that they try to put on Twitter when they're overt about it? The CCP has no propaganda game. And so if you were to make TikTok into that kind of product, you would break the product. Nobody would go on there. So, but I mean, I guess people finally figured out how stupid of a line that was and dropped it.
Yeah. So, okay. Can we just for a minute dial back and talk about the Montana ban and what happened there? Since we have said that the states are the laboratories of democracy and that's where all the stupid shit happens.
Montana passed a bill banning TikTok, as we alluded to at the top of the show. Theirs is sort of take HR 7521, which is itself unconstitutional, and just make things dumber. So Montana has several huge disadvantages in trying to pass such a law, starting not least, of course, with the fact that it is one state. And why is a single state trying to regulate the internet? So you have what's called a dormant commerce clause issue, that one state shouldn't be trying to regulate the internet for everybody. Of course, they'll claim it's geofence to their state. There are all kinds of problems with that, whatever. The other problem they have is, as a state, they don't have whatever information the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has about what kind of risk TikTok is. My suspicion is that when the ODNI finally coughs up whatever it has saying it's afraid of TikTok, it's all going to be maybe, could, hypothetical. We've heard some legislators saying as much. So I don't think there will be any there.
But the ODNI did say something along the lines of, yeah, this is a little dangerous.
Yes, and they gave a classified briefing to the House of Representatives, which clearly scared the shit out of those guys and got us the 50-0 vote. And then the senators. My guess, going back to your data thing, is these people have no idea how technology works, and they have no idea that if you did the same presentation with Facebook, there's all the same capabilities to harvest data and manipulate blah, blah, blah. And they just didn't understand that they were being shown like what a social media platform can do.
Yeah.
I digress. At least the federal government has an intelligence apparatus where maybe they know something. Montana's legislators aren't privy to any information that you or I don't know. So they have no national security grounds for passing this law. Now, I will say the district judge, in saying that the law is preempted by federal law, maybe went a little far. If California, say, passed a law banning conflict diamonds from Africa, is that trampling on the president's national security power? I mean, you want to be careful with that argument. So the odor is rotten. I don't know if it's necessarily the strongest legal argument. But of course, the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room is the First Amendment. And Montana made no effort whatsoever to tailor this bill or get around the First Amendment. We should talk about some of the stupid arguments being thrown around by the proponents of H.R. 7521 to evade the First Amendment or get over the scrutiny barrier that the First Amendment imposes. Mm-hmm. Montana made no effort to do any of that. They just ran smack into the First Amendment wall, Wile E. Coyote style. And as I said, the district judge's opinion is pretty scathing.
Right. That's a thing that happens when you are more interested in political posturing than actually legislating.
And the notion that you're getting up in the morning as a legislator in Montana thinking you have the wherewithal to craft I was giving my sort of trade hypothetical. And again, I don't think I would support such a bill, but you need to be thinking carefully about this when you're getting into regulating speech products. And we had people who were in no way qualified to be doing that, making a statement law.
Mm-hmm. Have these people never heard of a VPN? Look, I'm old, and I understand that if you think you are going to stop kids from accessing something on the internet, you have another thing coming. Like, sorry, have they never met a teenager? I guarantee you that the teenager is going to be able to get around your geofence. Like, give it a rest, people.
This is a much larger problem throughout the Save the Children legislation that we're seeing in the states. Mm-hmm. Suffice it to say that Spencer Cox in Utah trying to ban social media use for children between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., which, as I've said on your show before, is the most Utah thing ever. Good luck with that.
Yeah, right. Where did Pornhub isn't Pornhub not allowing, is it Texas that they're...
Pornhub has lifted stakes out of Texas, and I think a few other states as well.
I mean, that almost sounds dirty, but... Yeah.
I am wondering, quick aside, okay, so you've got this weird coalition on the right between the Catholic integralist style people who want to ban the porn and all that, but a huge faction of the right now is sort of the barstool, don't tread on me, folk libertarians. And I have to wonder if now that Pornhub is not in Texas, there's going to be a lot of dudes in Texas going, wait, no, this is not what I signed up for. You're taking away my porn?
I mean, none of this is a coherent philosophy, right? The people who are saying, oh, the U.S. government shouldn't pressure social media, that's the Murphy v. Missouri case that was argued last week. The same people that are saying, like, it's a damn travesty and it's government censorship for the government to say, hey, Twitter, maybe don't post all this anti-vax content during a plague.
Oh my goodness, the hypocrisy here. During the Murphy argument, the Solicitor General of Louisiana was asked, okay, there's this video making the rounds on social media. And what it is how high of a height can you jump off of without seriously injuring yourself? And it's super popular with the kids. Can the government contact that social media platform and say, this is out there, it's going viral, it's very dangerous, please suppress it or take it down? And the Louisiana Solicitor General says, well, I'm a First Amendment purist. I think they can highlight that. But the moment they ask for it to be taken down, no, that's improper. This from the Solicitor General of a state that supports Florida and Texas in the net choice cases, where there are laws saying we, the states, can completely co-opt your content moderation. We, by statute, can fully control it. So, yes, the hypocrisy is, I run out of words.
Yeah, and I think in your article, you point out the way that this ban is kind of scrambling valences, right? That you've got Krishnamurthy, who is, a pretty serious liberal, allied with Mike Gallagher, who is a pretty serious not liberal. And is he still a congressman, or is he already noped out
for the next 10 minutes? He's taking his ball and going home next month so he can go work for Palantir.
I know, which is very funny. You want to tell them what Palantir is?
So to put in a quick aside, because I have a bone to pick about this, if you're on X these days and you're against the TikTok bill, it's only a matter of time before you're accused of being a shill for the CCP. We're at height McCarthyism over there.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, one of the lead sponsors of the bill, Mike Gallagher, he writes this bill, and then his very next step is to go work for Palantir, the Peter Thiel founded military adjacent tech company. They do lots of AI powered surveillance. They're very involved in the war in Ukraine right now, which has a corporate interest in us being as afraid of the CCP as possible.
Yeah. You know who's really afraid of the CCP? Tom Cotton.
Under every rock, under every plant.
Under every rock. In fact, he's so afraid of it that he thinks it's in Singapore. Here, we're going to play the clip.
So you said today, as you often say, that you live in Singapore. Of what nation are you a citizen?
Singapore.
Are you a citizen of any other nation?
No, Senator.
Have you ever applied for Chinese citizenship?
Senator, I served my nation in Singapore. No, I did not.
Do you have a Singaporean passport?
Yes, and I served my military for two and a half years in Singapore.
Do you have any other passports from any other nations?
No, Senator.
Your wife is an American citizen. Your children are American citizens.
That's correct.
Have you ever applied for American citizenship?
No, not yet.
Okay. Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Senator, I'm Singaporean. No.
Have you ever been associated or affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party?
No, Senator. Again, I'm Singaporean.
What I love about this clip is, what do they say? History doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. This is just repetition. This is McCarthyism. So hot right now. This is just the straight, I'm going to do the exact thing that has the sullied reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Are you now, or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? It's just so on the nose.
Yeah. Just to be clear, that was Tom Cotton harassing Shu Chu, who is the CEO of TikTok. He is from Singapore. He is not Chinese. He is not a member of the Chinese Communist Party. And he is like looking at Tom Cotton like, what the hell?
I don't want to overstate this. Some people go whole hog for this. And I want to be clear that it's not a be-all, end-all argument. But TikTok LLC is an American company.
Mm-hmm.
The people who work for it are in Los Angeles. It is owned by ByteDance, which in turn is owned largely by international investors, including a lot of American investors. Now, there is a trickle down. Ultimately, I would concede that the CCP can control ByteDance if it wants, and maybe there are orders trickling down. But to accuse Shu Chu of being a CCP puppet, or frankly, of any American employee working in the company in Los Angeles, is taking some very big leaps. I think you're firmly in McCarthyite land when you're doing that.
Completely. Okay. So just now that we've given more background, let's double back and talk about what they want to happen here, because the legislators are hoping to force a sale of TikTok to an American company.
This actually connects very well to what I was just saying about international investors owning ByteDance, because were this to work out, and some of the legislators are weirdly confident that we'll be able to just buy TikTok, the main losers would be like American investment firms. The idea
that are invested in ByteDance,
that invested in ByteDance before our little Red Scare hit fever pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Mnuchin, which is just so great, right? Because he was in the Trump administration.
Right, he was Treasury Secretary.
Which, for all we know, he was privy to sensitive information at the time related to this, and now he gets to turn around and try and put together a group to buy TikTok. It's priceless. The best endgame would be, for these folks, they're envisioning a sale to maybe Oracle or Steve Mnuchin not Facebook or Google, because that would create huge antitrust problems. And these right-wing people hate those companies anyway. So they're very picky. There's only a few people who can come up with, $100 billion to buy TikTok.
I have heard, wait for it, because Trump, the Truth Social, like the absolute MAGA acolytes, it's super impressive to me, because I'm on Truth Social for my job and I've written about this, that there are a whole lot of people on that website who think that Truth Social, a company with 5 million, active monthly users, is going to buy this gigantic, international, wildly successful company. They think that Donald Trump is going to wind up owning TikTok, which is amazing.
I saw it mentioned that Truth Social has the revenue roughly of a single Chick-fil-A restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, Chick-fil-A is usually profitable, though. Truth Social is way in the red.
The take home here is that any sale would be a fire sale. Hence my saying at the outset that our plan is to steal TikTok. But that also points up what you just said, the First Amendment issue, that as a user of TikTok, you have a right. Put aside TikTok. You can hate TikTok. You're an American. You have a right to information. And that includes a right to information as presented by this popular app that's created an appealing algorithm, and not the same, like an app with the same name owned by Steve Mnuchin or Donald Trump that's a piece of shit.
Right. We are talking about Truth Socializing TikTok, right?
Oh, I love
Truth
that.
Social is an absolute clone of Twitter, and it's a piece of garbage, right? The fact that we're going to force, American investors in ByteDance to lose their shirt and allow the company to be bought by Stephen Mnuchin or Larry Ellison of Oracle or whatever, consortium, and turn it into junk is I mean, all of these people who say that they're pro-capitalism and anti-CCP, that would be such a government control, top-down refutation of everything that they say.
The cronyism here is unbelievable. The only thing that keeps you from vomiting about it is that a sale is just never going to happen. These people.
Can you explain why?
Well, the CCP actually, shortly after the last round, the Trump round, they adjusted their trade restrictions to make it so that you need the CCP's approval to export an algorithm. And people took that to mean very clearly that they are not going to let TikTok be sold in America. But, there are multiple issues here. Number one, they are not going to be taken for suckers and let themselves be robbed by the United States. But then two, this is a propaganda coup for the CCP. If TikTok gets banned, the CCP can spend the rest of history saying, those Americans, they talk about free speech. They talk about, a big game about that. They don't mean it. They don't believe it. Look, they banned TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, and we've said it's terrible that the CCP doesn't allow Facebook or Twitter to be in their country. Well, we're going to lose the moral high ground on that if we do something which winds up with TikTok being banned here.
Oh, I assure you that they view this as a wonderful rhetorical cudgel should it happen. So the CCP, and I think that's why you don't hear them making a whole lot of noise right now. If TikTok gets banned, they get a rhetorical win. And as we mentioned earlier, they don't even lose money. It's Sequoia that gets fleeced in this scenario.
Right, because Sequoia is the institutional investors who own great chunks of ByteDance and that are going to lose their shirts.
And we should tie in, before maybe we get back to more serious matters, there is a man named Jeff Yass. He is a founder of one of the major investment firms holding, it's at least $21 billion in ByteDance. It might be more. And it was the darndest thing. He met with Donald Trump days before Donald Trump came out with his flip-flop saying that now he is against the TikTok ban. And Donald Trump just happens to be strapped for cash these days. And Jeff Yass is flush and is a huge Republican donor. I'm not implying anything here whatsoever, of course.
I don't know what you are getting at, Mr. Barthold. So you wrote a really excellent article about this week at The Bulwark, which we're gonna link to in the show notes. And what I really thought was impressive about it was that you laid out all of the political posturing and why it's dumb and why it crosses. It's not cleanly mapping onto right-left divides.
That is correct. So and I have to say, as somebody who's adamantly against this TikTok bill or a TikTok ban. I described in the article the opponents against the bill, and I was quoting Peter Suderman of Reason. They resemble a midnight drunk dinner at Denny's. It is an insane mix.
What do you have against midnight drunk dinner at Denny's? Were you never like a college student? Calm down.
No, it's precisely because I had so much fun in college that I know how vivid that analogy is.
Yeah.
I, in opposing a TikTok ban, am aligned with Donald Trump and AOC and Elon Musk and Thomas Massey. It's absolutely bonkers.
Oh my gosh, Thomas Massey. Like, if you ever find yourself on the same side as Thomas Massey, rethink. I mean, no, I don't rethink, but gosh, among those people, right? Because Donald Trump doesn't believe anything. Occasionally, you're going to find yourself on the same side as him just like by accident because he takes every position, all at once.
Yeah, totally.
And I often agree with AOC, but Thomas Massey, my God.
But one thing that does get frustrating is there's just so much bullshit getting shoveled around here and not a lot of deep thinking. And there are totally insane arguments opposing a ban, which I won't dip into for the moment because I want instead to use my time to talk about all the bullshit arguments in favor of this bill, because there is a crew aligned with the sort of Dan Crenshaw jingoist that I've talked about.
Yeah.
On the right, sort of this swampy DC low rent right wing think tank ecosystem.
Did you just say low rent? Are you saying that these are guys with bad hair?
This gets into a larger philosophical thing that I think it's bad for a democracy when one side completely collapses intellectually. I don't actually think it's a good thing that all the smart people in the country are liberal. I think that structurally actually makes both sides not as
you're
sharp
not liberal,
as they could
so
be.
that's fine.
I think you need two intellectual factions that can actually have a coherent argument.
No, I take your point. I mean, I'm only ribbing you because you're so libertarian, and now we find ourselves on the same side of all of these issues. When I think in a normal country where, as you said, where there were two intellectual parties, where there were two parties that were real and not, just this demagogic nonsense on one side, you and I wouldn't agree all the time, but since Donald Trump ruined everything, we sit at the same side of the table. So that's nice.
It would be so interesting to do the sci-fi film where we have our exact relationship, but back when like Mitt Romney was the Republican nominee and I lived in California and I was totally naive about what propped up the party. But to get these low rent people, I'm not talking about their haircuts, I'm talking about their brains. Every time a tech issue comes up, they start flinging legal arguments at the wall and getting themselves completely convinced that they are totally awesome. And it's just lots of step one thinking. And I wanted to cover a few of these just very quickly because they're going to start getting purchase. You're going to start hearing Ted Cruz throwing these arguments around.
Another guy who knows better.
So they've convinced themselves that because it's just about ownership, again, we're just stealing TikTok. We're not banning it, that somehow means there's no First Amendment problem here. And they actually point to a provision in the Communications Act that limits foreign ownership of broadcast stations, which is so ironic because if you dig back, I know this is in the weeds, but there was a Supreme Court decision called Red Lion that said broadcast, because it is scarce, there's only so much spectrum out there, it's a public good, and the government can regulate it in ways that normally it couldn't because of the First Amendment. This is what led us to the fairness doctrine, which we shouldn't dive into that whole morass, other than to note this was the bete noir of Rush Limbaugh and all the right-wing radio commentators for decades. It finally died in I believe it was the Reagan administration, but it always pops up here and there. Suddenly you've got these right-wing people who they're pointing at a provision that could only be propped up. You can only justify these foreign ownership restrictions with the scarcity rationale. You have to revive Red Lion. You have to revive all of the arguments that underlay the fairness doctrine. And now you've got these conservatives, these right-wing people saying, this is awesome. This is what we should do. The internet is not a scarce medium. The Supreme Court found as much in a case called Reno versus ACLU. I would also point out app stores aren't a scarce resource. So it's a total non sequitur to lift this stuff from broadcast signals and apply it to the internet. And yet they are doing it, and they think it's awesome. They think it's the silver bullet that's going to make this constitutional. You're going to start hearing Ted Cruz saying this. Mark my words. So just know it's bullshit, please.
Yeah,
listeners.
isn't the whole issue here is that the algorithms push things to the top of your feed? And the reason that we need algorithms to push things to the top of the feed is that we have the opposite of scarcity. We're all drowning in a sea of data, right?
Yes!
So to premise this on the scarcity of data or the scarcity of spectrum or the scarcity of we don't have 3 channels here. It's not like when we were kids or, when I was a kid. You're a little younger than I am.
Thank you. No, you've put your finger on the exact issue. We have problems. But they are problems related to the information explosion and what you'll sometimes hear called the revolt of the public. Experts don't get any credence because people can live in their little bespoke realities. They can go and find the facts that they want to believe. And we do not have a scarcity problem. We have an explosion problem, if anything. Mm-hmm. Okay. The other one you'll hear a lot of, and this is just the right's favorite goddamn thing. Oh, it's not speech, it's conduct. And you see this over and over and over again with them lately.
Every one of these things, every one of these arguments that's about speech, they always try and say it's not about speech, right? They've trotted this dumb thing out. It's the new publisher versus platform. Like it's conduct, not speech. That's the new.
We last saw this, although we've seen it multiple times, with Governor DeSantis's Stop Woke Act, which got smacked down in the 11th Circuit, where Florida said, we're not limiting companies from giving CRT or DEI training or expressing their views. We're just basically stopping them from having meetings where the employees are like in the room and hear it kind of thing. In this one, it's, we're not regulating speech. We're just regulating who owns TikTok. Now, of course, if Donald Trump owns TikTok, the speech that is on TikTok is going to change dramatically. You get even like Cooper and Kirk, a prominent conservative law firm in DC, clearly got paid money by some DC think tanks, undisclosed, to make the best possible case in favor of this bill. And they made this argument. And I have to say, it gave me confidence. If this is the best you can do to say it's conduct, your bill is in big trouble, because the bill itself, there are actually several ways that this could go down in flames in court. One of them is to say it's still content-based. You're going after, you may not like foreign-controlled apps, but that is a specific category of speech that you were targeting. That's a problem. You have a problem that it targets speech in general. Like right there in the bill, it defines covered companies that the president can ban as companies that allow individuals to create accounts and talk with each other. So it's right there that they are singling out speech. There's a First Amendment issue here. Mm-hmm. So again, this one is lost before in other areas. It would lose here. But if you pay attention to this debate, you're going to see this waved around with extraordinary confidence by, to pick on him again, the Ted Cruzes supporting this bill.
Oh, pick on Ted Cruz. He's like a podcaster who pretends to be a politician. It's all crap.
So yeah, the First Amendment is going to apply. And once it applies, you have something called tiers of scrutiny. It's going to be either strict scrutiny or intermediate scrutiny. And just long story short, you need to pass something that's narrowly tailored if you're going to suppress speech. You need to be careful not to suppress more speech than is necessary. And suffice it to say that if your concern is foreign propaganda, you, the U.S. government, have every right to go out and say, hey, American citizens, you should know that if you're on TikTok, there might be a CCP thumb on the scales. We, the government, are worried about that. And they can say that if they want.
I mean, unless the Fifth Circuit prevails and the government can't say anything about what's on social media.
Yes, let's put that aside. Okay, yeah. The government can do that. And then you're an American. Like, you're an adult. You can figure out what to think for yourself. That's the whole premise of our system of the government is that we're not the CCP. We don't ban apps. You look at content and make up your own mind. So, yeah, the First Amendment hurdles here are immense.
Yeah, and the last time you were here, you had written an article in praise of Kavanaugh with respect to the social media bans. And as much as I dislike Justice Brett Kavanaugh, I think he's already tipped his hand that he thinks that would be a violation of the First Amendment. Or what do you think there?
So there's lots of listeners and speakers at issue here. And this lawsuit could go in many ways, several of which the proponents of the bill don't seem to be thinking about. So you'll hear people, again, my low rent think tank people say, well, TikTok's a foreign company. They don't have speech rights. And I have to say, it's actually unsettled. Mm-hmm. TikTok's an American company, but they're potentially foreign controlled. There is case law that says that foreigners can be regulated in how they interact with our democracy, with elections or things like that. Mm-hmm. But then we also have case law saying that foreign resident aliens have speech rights. This is less settled than one might think. Maybe TikTok has its own First Amendment rights. Maybe it doesn't. But anybody who tells you it's clearly settled and that they don't know what they're talking about. But that's just the beginning, right? Because aren't these people going to be surprised if this bill gets enacted? And it's frickin' Apple that comes in and files a lawsuit and says, we have a right to decide who is and is not in our app store. And so there's a potential First Amendment argument to be made there. And then the one that I've been focusing on throughout this episode, because it is the strongest, whatever, TikTok, don't worry about TikTok, the company. You don't have to care about TikTok, the company. You, as an American, have a right to read and watch and listen to whatever the fuck you want.
Yes, agree. So you seem to think that it is going to get passed. This bill has passed the House overwhelmingly. You think it's going to make it through the Senate?
Oh, no, I don't know. If I had to bet, I think it will. But the Senate is just a very different creature from the House. So as you and I are talking, they're on a recess. We're in a bit of a lull. I expect we will have a hearing, probably in the Commerce Committee, although don't guarantee that, in the next few weeks. Some senators have made sounds that they maybe want to mark this bill up. Some have said maybe they want to write a bill of their own. There are a lot of egos in the Senate, and some of them have ideas about wanting to do things their own way. And that's not always bad, but things can get pulled in a lot of different directions in the Senate through all sorts of procedural curlicues that don't exist in the House.
So you think if they don't actually want to pass this garbage bill, they'll find a way to kind of think about it so long that it fades away?
Sure. So there are people who are adamantly against it, like Rand Paul, and they have procedural ways to cause delay. And then there are senators who might insist this is not the thing we should be doing. We should be doing my bill that kicks the kids off social media or creates a new agency or whatever. And it may just die from running out of time and too many senators having too many ideas of what they want to do on their own.
But let's just play this out. Let's play a lot of hypotheticals. Assume that it or a similar bill makes it through both houses of Congress. Do you think that the Biden administration would sign it?
So President Biden has already planted his flag and said that he will sign this bill if it is passed and ends up on his desk. So,
Ice Cream Joe, stop.
They're killing people, Liz. They're killing people.
They're killing people. It's a typo. Yeah, and can we just point out that some of this "they're killing people" comes from Facebook, specifically planting stories in the media to make TikTok look bad?
Well, it is one of those weird, if you're J.D. Vance and you support this bill, I don't know if he's come out explicitly in support, but I won't be surprised if he supports it on the sort of anti-CCP angle. But I thought you hated Facebook. And the closest thing to a reasonable thought that Donald Trump had in discussing this issue is that if you ban TikTok, you will add immense business to Facebook, not directly to old Facebook Blue, where all the boomers are taken in by AI pictures and think they're real these days, which is a thing. But
and it's true.
Reels, which is Facebook's clone of TikTok, would Facebook would love to see TikTok banned.
Yes, it's very funny to see all of these supposedly, anti-big tech companies talking about banning TikTok, which would be absolutely a massive boon to all of the big tech companies here.
Well, as I discussed in my Bulwark article, I have strong views about the First Amendment here. I waste time on social media shooting down stupid arguments. But I will admit, I'm just sort of entertained by the absolutely insane factions here, because you have elements like what you just meant. Like, do we hate the CCP or do we hate the other big tech companies? You end up with these. Are we afraid of the national security state? Or there's an entertaining scrambling of the usual scripts here. And I would be lying if I said I don't kind of figuratively have my popcorn out.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the end of democracy, potentially, as we know it, in the next year is going to suck, but it is going to make for some interesting viewing.
Yeah, watching the world end is very entertaining right up until the leopard eats your face. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, Corbin, you are, as usual, a delightful, if a little bit alarming guest to have on the show.
Sorry, I had the rant turned up to 11 on this one.
Love it.
Once I get a head of steam going on bad First Amendment arguments, it's hard to corral me.
All right. Well, I look forward to having you back for another rant very soon. Thanks, Corbin.
Thank you so much for having me.
Law and Chaos Podcast is a production of Raise Up Media, LLC, is intended solely as entertainment, does not constitute legal advice, and does not form an attorney-client relationship. This show is researched and written by Liz Dye and produced by Bryce Blankenagel. Law and Chaos Pod, copyright 2024, Raise Up Media, LLC, all rights reserved.